Alright, so we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is macroinvertebrates. We're going to kind of go over why they're important and what we can do to help protect them. So, what is a macroinvertebrate? Well, macro basically means big, and an invertebrate is an animal without a backbone. Are we invertebrates? We are not. We are vertebrates because we have a backbone, right? So a macroinvertebrate is any animal without a backbone that we don't need a microscope to help us see. They still can be pretty small sometimes, and a microscope or at least a magnifying glass might help us see them a little better. And there are a lot of different kinds of them, and a lot of them start their lives living in the water. Has anyone ever seen a dragonfly before? Yeah, well, guess what? They started their life living underwater. And they looked a lot different. They didn't have wings. They just crawled along the mucky bottom of the water. Now, how do they become a dragonfly with wings? Does anyone know a fancy word that starts with M? Metamorphosis. That's good, yeah. They go through metamorphosis, which you probably heard about when you learned about butterflies. Does anyone know what the stages of a butterfly's life cycle are? Yeah, so it starts out as an egg, and then it goes into the larval stage, which is a caterpillar, and then it goes into the pupal stage, which is when it hides in the little chrysalis, and then it becomes an adult butterfly. So a lot of bugs, macroinvertebrates, will go through a similar metamorphosis, and some will live in the water part of their lives and live outside of the water for the rest of their lives. So why do you think it's important that there are so many bugs, so many macroinvertebrates in the water, and so many different kinds? Yeah, one really good reason is that they provide food for a lot of other creatures that live in the water. They are the base of the food chain, pretty much. Almost the base, maybe algae is. But they're close to the base of the food chain for an aquatic ecosystem. So a lot of fish rely on macroinvertebrates to survive. Now, what would happen if there were no fish in the water? There might be a lot less food for birds, and it would just not be as healthy of an ecosystem. So it's really important to have all these different creatures. Now, some macroinvertebrates are a really good indicator of healthy water. So an indicator species is a species that changes its physiological appearance or its behavior based on changes in its environment. So some species of macroinvertebrates are less tolerant of pollution than others. So what do you think it means if you find a species that is not tolerant of pollution in a body of water? What do you think that says about that body of water? Yeah, it means there's probably not much pollution, hopefully not any. So it's great if you're able to find these species that are indicators of healthy water. Now, there are a couple things that we can do to help protect these bodies of water as individuals. And so if you're going swimming in one of these bodies of water, do you think you should wear bug spray? You don't really need to wear it in the water. It's okay to wear if you're walking around in the woods. You don't want those mosquitoes biting you, and we want to do what we can to avoid that. But if you're swimming, you don't really need bug spray. That's actually going to really harm the aquatic ecosystem of that water body. And if a lot of people go swimming there with bug spray on, then those bugs in the water, those macroinvertebrates, are going to start not doing so well, and it can affect the whole food chain in that body of water. So we want to try to do what we can to keep that body of water healthy. So to show you a couple examples of different types of macroinvertebrates, we're going to look at some pictures. So one example of a bug that you're familiar with is this one here. This is a mosquito larva. Now they are tolerant of pollution, so that you'll find them in pretty much any body of water. And so if you find them, well, that's pretty common. This is another example of a macroinvertebrate that starts its life. I mentioned it earlier. It's a dragonfly nymph. So these are very common to find in a lot of bodies of water. They're kind of in the middle. They are a little less tolerant of pollution, but they're not as sensitive as some other ones. This one here is a mayfly. You can see it's got the 6 legs like all insects do and 3 tails. That's pretty indicative of a mayfly nymph. And one more, this is my favorite one right here. It's a caddisfly larva. They're pretty cool because the insect is right here, and this right here is kind of a shell that it built for itself by basically gluing pieces of sand together and making a shell that it can live inside of. And it lives there until it's ready to hatch, until it's ready to go through metamorphosis and become an adult caddisfly that flies out of the water. So these are some pretty cool creatures, and they're pretty fun to be able to find out in the wild, and I hope that you'll get to see them someday.